Hello everybody, my name is Gavin Grant. I'm a freshman this year. This is my first year here at Marq. As I previously stated in my trailer, my project would focus about the history of witchcraft and its development over time. But I realized that this was not a very good decision, and I decided to narrow it down and focus on the witch trials. This is because I realized after research that there's not a lot of other noteworthy events within the history of witchcraft. And witch trials are a very intriguing topic. It is very disturbing. I have learned a lot from this project, whether it be sickening or intriguing. For my sustainable development goal, I chose number 16, Peace, Justice, and Strong Institutions. My choice behind this is that I'd like to help educate others about this terrible time within our history. Perhaps by doing so, this shall assist in avoiding another atrocious event like this from occurring, and instead bring peace. I do not want to see another mass panic over those who are different and those who do not fit society's standards. As for my driving question, I will be answering what sort of events occurred during the witch trials. But before we answer this, it may be best to define what what witchcraft is. By doing so, we shall have a better understanding. So, what is witchcraft and what is a witch? Well, the definition of witchcraft is defined as the practice of using spellwork and magic. Although another definition could include the changing of everyday events using the powers of the supernatural or magical forces. Although, defining the definition of a witch is more challenging. The historic definition defines them as one who causes harms to others by mystical means. Despite the beliefs in what they've been stereotyped as, these are false rumors and false definitions. To be a witch could mean so many things, and it very much differs from whoever you ask. Everybody has different thoughts and beliefs, either they be a witch or non-witch, so it is nearly impossible to give it a one-size-fits-all definition. Think of it however you would like, for everybody has the right to their own beliefs and opinions. What were the witch trials? Well, the witch trials are also known as the burning times. This was a terrible time in our history when tens of thousands of innocent people were executed for crimes of witchcraft. These terrible times of the witch trials lasted from the 15th century to the 17th century, approximately 200 years. This was a time when mass hysteria and huge anxiety swept over. Because folks did not have the knowledge about the world that they have as today's generations, witches were blamed for the misfortunes that occurred and affected others. It is not clear in the slightest, but an estimated 50,000 people were believed to be executed, with the majority of 80% being women. Many, many more people were accused and are arrested. There were many reasons that people were executed, and some were very bizarre. According to many traditions, apparently being left-handed had something sinister and evil about it, meaning that one was a witch. This cruel and devastating event stretched over mainly Europe, and slipped into other locations of the world, such as Salem, Massachusetts, of the United States. Even though the times of the trials ended within the 17th century, there are still witch trials within the modern day, mainly located within Africa and Asia. What began the burning times? The burning times is believed to began in what is believed 1847 or 1487. It is not exactly clear what began this tragedy, whether it be from the Little Ice Age, causing both economic declines as well as food shortages, or droughts, crop decays, plague, or other misfortunes. In addition, folks did not have the knowledge as today's generations, as I previously stated. Another contributing factor could have been due to the publishing of a book known as Malleus Maleficarum, which has been translated to Witch's Hammer. This book has 3 separate parts. The first part emphasizes the reality of witchcraft as well as its supposed corruptedness. The second part is a collection of stories about witches and the nefarious acts that they would commit. And finally, the third and final part discusses legal procedures to follow during a witch trial. There are many thoughts and beliefs of what caused the witch trials. As stated before, folks did not have the knowledge that we own today and blamed those who were different for the tragedies. There was a strong belief in the cult and witches at the time. Because of this, they were blamed for bringing the misfortunes of others. There's also the thought of unsettled disputes and rivalries, as well as personal differences between one another. Many accused had unsettled agreements with others, or perhaps were seen as a threat to the community. In addition, the accusers may have also seen of getting a reward. This is. Here we go. What were the Salem witch trials? The Salem witch trials is one of the most popular and well-known witch trials, which began in around 1691. It consisted of a series of investigations as well as prosecutions. About 150 to 200 people were accused of witchcraft, and I believe 20 to 30 folks were executed. Despite the beliefs, none of them were executed by burning, as this was more of a European belief. None of them were executed by burning, because this was more of a European belief. Instead, they were taken to Gallows Hill to be hung. All but one were executed in this fashion, as one was pressed to death by heavy stones instead. Many of those arrested died within jail before having a chance of their trial. But what led to this? It began when two young girls began exhibiting very strange behavior. They were examined by a doctor who found nothing physically wrong with them. Even so, he claimed that they were under a dark hand, although their behavior could have been due to ergot poisoning. News began to sweep through the village, and the symptoms began to spread. Four of the afflicted threw accusations about being tormented, and they accused 3 local women. As time went on, accusations spread around like a wildfire, and this is how the trials took off. And then here is a memorial dedicated to the innocent lives taken during the Salem witch trials. What witch tests were used? During the burning times, many so-called tests were used in determining one's innocence if they were a witch or not. Although these tests were very bizarre and absurd and were definitely a terrible use of evidence. To add, the majority of these seemed nearly impassable and would most likely result in condemnation. Many unfortunate people fell victim to these tests, ranging from either ridiculous to inhumanly cruel. Things all messed up. One of these very bizarre tests would include the swimming test, where the incriminated would have their limbs tied together by rope and tossed into a body of water, most likely being a lake of some sort. It was believed that only a witch would float. It was also thought by religious belief that water is a sacred element, and one possessed by evil would be repelled by the water and causing them to float. If the accused floated, then they would be found guilty and punished accordingly. On the other account, if the one held for questioning were not to float and instead sink, moving on, another very strange test would include reciting a small passage from the Bible known as the prayer test. This occurred as it was believed that witches would not be able to cite words of the Bible, most likely the Lord's Prayer, I believe. Stuttering or fumbling on words count as evidence against you, meaning you had little room for error and mishaps. Yet it was also very challenging for those who happened to memorize it, as you could have been very anxious to speak or disliked public speaking. Their life was on the line after all. You would be scared too, wouldn't you? And then there's a little illustration depicting what a swimming test might have looked like. I forgot to mention that part. Okay. Moving on. What different witch trials occurred? Numerous witch trials occurred throughout the world, and the majority of them took place within Europe. Unfortunately, these trials were very poor documented, leaving behind a scarce amount of evidence, and creating a very difficult situation to state exactly what evidence unfolded, or what events unfolded. Central Europe, Germany, France, and Switzerland were very common to these trials. Scotland, Scandinavia, and Poland were not as common to these trials, but they still occurred nonetheless. A few other well-known trials would include the witch trials of Trier, Germany, lasting from 1581 to 1593, Fulda, Germany, from 1603 to 1606, Würzburg, Germany, from 1625 to 1631, and Bamberg, Germany, from 1626 to 1631. Although these events were very uncommon, they were atrocious and left devastating impacts on communities. And then, I forgot to take up the part of the Salem witch trials, as I've already discussed that. And then here on the right, we can see a map of the witch trials taking place within Europe. Red meaning there was areas of sustained and heavy persecutions of important witch hunters. Orange of areas of sustained moderate persecution or significant local crises. And yellow of areas of relatively light but not insignificant persecutions. What was the impact from the trials? The times of these trials ended in what was believed to be the mid-1700s. However, the damage had already been dealt. An innumerable number of people had suffered inhumane conditions, whether execution or false imprisonment. Communities were also heavily injured, as tensions grew and innocent lives were taken. Due to all the death and imprisonment, this could have also possibly damaged the economy, since large areas of land could go without harvest. This is especially common within Salem, once the trials had come to a closing. When the trials had come to a close, practicing magic was allowed to continue peacefully. Witches continued to tell fortunes, sell charms, and other practices of magic. The higher-ups began to lose interest in persecuting and executing those who utilized it. Instead, witchcraft was viewed as an illness of one's imagination, such as being insane or mentally crazy. Quick recap and a wrap-up. In summary, the witch trials was a terrible time in our history when countless lives were taken. It was a series of hearings and prosecutions that were commonly located within Europe. Many believed that all the misfortunes that were occurring was the work of witches, who were evil people who worked alongside the devil. What causes and effects? The publishing of Malleus Maleficarum most likely contributed, but other tragedies could have also. As a result, many lives were taken, communities of people had been damaged and or destroyed, and beliefs in witchcraft began to shift into a different direction. But why should all of this matter? In my thoughts and beliefs, I feel that this reveals how devastatingly cruel people can be to one another, and the lengths that we are willing to cross. The Burning Times matters because it reveals how terrible we can be as human beings, especially to each other. Due to all the events that occurred, society has been affected, and these even may carry over to the modern day. We are unable to change the past, yet we can shape the future. I believe that as a society, we can prevent another event like this from happening by better educating ourselves, as well as being more accepting of those who are different, rather than scapegoating. I hope that you took something away from this and take action to improve yourself as a person. Here's all my 19 sources, most of them being Salem witch trials, as that's really all I could find. And finally, thank you for watching. Y'all got any questions for me?